Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. I am your book reviewer, and today we're going to review the book Glass by Ellen Hopkins. If you remember my review last time, this is a sequel to the book that I did before called Crank. And so because it's a sequel, it has the same major characters. The narration being by a woman named Christina Snow. And most of the characters in her family are still the same, and but there's different ones as well. So it kind of leaves off around the where Crank ended, maybe like a month or two later. If you remember from the end of Crank, Christina does have a son. She is 17 with a son, and she was at the end still addicted to meth, but had vowed to stop the habit and get clean. So when we open with Glass, she is clean in a sense. She didn't go to any like detox or anything, but she stopped the drug, and so therefore she is somewhat clean. But she slowly gets back into that habit where she's craving more drugs and is trying to find other ways to get them. And it begins with her 18th birthday, and her father is coming to Reno from Albuquerque for her birthday, and this kind of coincides with her son Hunter's baptism. And on kind of a joyride with her father and her father's girlfriend, Linda Sue, I think is her name, she does get a hold of more Crank, or Glass right now, which is the crystallized version of meth, and she indulges in more with her father and Linda, and they hit up a casino, and they stay all night, and they almost miss Hunter's baptism. Actually, they're very late for it, and but they do have it. And so that kind of begins her downward spiral with now crystallized meth. She does look up an kind of old friend from Crank whose name is Robin. Robin is now across the Nevada border into California going to school, but she assumes that Robin is still doing meth, and so she goes to go visit Robin, and she meets a man by the name of Trey, who is a very big character in this book. And she strikes up a friendship with Trey because Trey is kind of Robin's drug dealer. He provides her with the meth, so now Christina knows, hey, this is an opportunity to buy some from him. So Trey also goes to school in the same place where Robin does in California, but he vows to keep seeing Christina because Christina wants to buy meth from him. So that's kind of where Christina gets most of her meth from, is Trey, and he kind of he goes back and forth very frequently, and they kind of strike up a romantic relationship where there's lots of sex involved and lots of drug involved. And even though through the beginning Christina was saying, I'm not going to do what I did before, I'm only going to do a little bit each day, and I guess kind of a normal kind of addict's tone with that they feel that they're in control of the drug, where really it's the other way around. The drug is in control of them. So through all of this, she does get a job at the 7-Eleven, where she does meet another man named Grady, who is also kind of he doesn't really have the drug necessarily like that he deals to her, but she knows that he also does meth, so he knows other people that they deal with. So and also her boss at the 7-Eleven is a man by the name of Kevin, who he doesn't do drugs. Well, Christina assumes he does, but it's never said whether he does or not. But he's just a very shady guy because he really likes the way Christina looks, and he tries to get Christina into the porn industry, where he's like, if you want some money on the side, I got this other thing where I'm doing, but she never does that. So eventually, the drugs get too big for Christina and too bad for her family, because her family realized that she's using drugs again, so they kick her out of her house without Hunter. So Hunter is at her mom's house, and Christina now has to find a place to live. So, and she tries to get a hold of Trey, and to no avail. Trey is very unreliable, unfortunately. So, but Trey does introduce her beforehand to his cousin, whose name is Brad, and Brad has a house, and he's also that's where Trey gets his drugs from, is Brad. Brad is a dealer, and Brad has, again, a house with two little girls, and he was married, but his wife left him. So that's who Trey arranges for where Christina to live, is with Brad. So it's a very interesting situation where Christina is there with Brad and his two girls, and Christina becomes the girls' nanny. The girls' names are Devin and Latreia. Fun names. But eventually, because Christina is becoming less, she's talking to Trey less, because Trey is at school and he's getting harder and harder to get a hold of, she becomes romantically involved with Brad. They have kind of a shared thing where Brad is still very upset that his wife left him, and he's lonely, and Christina is lonely too, and the drugs kind of make them more pleasurable to each other, and so they get romantically involved at the same time that Christina is involved with Trey. And there's actually one scene where Trey is on his way home, but he's not home yet, and Christina and Brad have sex, and then Brad is still sleeping in Christina's bed when Trey comes over, and he's like, and she feels horrible because of this happened, and he's like, oh no big deal. So and that strikes her as weird, and so she figures that they do that a lot. Trey and Brad do that a lot. But anyway, and so she tries to get away from Brad, or Brad's wife actually shows back up, so Christina realizes she's screwed. So she moves out of Brad's house, and this is kind of when Trey comes back, having been kicked out of college because of his grades, or his drug use too. So he and Christina get a house, or an apartment together, and this is where Christina tries to get Hunter back. She eventually does get him back, and they try in her mind to live kind of as a nice, happy couple with a family in this apartment, but then she realizes it's no working, because Trey is supposedly looking for a job, but he's gone all hours of the day, and she can never get a hold of him, and the baby's crying, and things like that. She's realizing that this was not a good thing and a good decision to do. So and so she ends up giving Hunter back to her mom, and Hunter's mom does in fact get custody of Hunter, or Christina's mom gets in custody of Hunter, and Christina kind of gets in a kind of a life of crime, because part of where this meth is coming is from the Mexican mafia, or the Mexican drug lords, I guess. I'm not sure if I mentioned them in Crank, but they are mentioned in Crank. And so she writes bad checks under her mom's name, so they're on the run from her, or for her, and they're on the run from the cops and things like that. So they decide to make a clean break and go across the state lines to California, and so they have all of their belongings and basically a whole pound of meth, because they're like, well, we'll go to California and we'll sell it, because that does well in California. So and unfortunately, on a rest stop, they are pulled over And the cops do see all the drugs that they have in their possession. So Christina and Trey are carted off to jail, and that's kind of where the book ends. They, she does get out because not good behavior necessarily, but the prosecutors are kind of strike a deal with her that if she helps them bring down the Mexican mafia or the Mexican drug lords, she will get a lighter sentence, which I believe she eventually does agree to. And also, through at the very end of the book, you do also realize learn she is pregnant again by Trey's baby, and she hopes that because she had a boy the last time, she hopes it's a girl this time. And again, kind of the same thing that Crank did, ended, that she hopes to get clean again, and she realized what she did wrong, and she wants a better life for this child now that's growing inside of her. But you don't know really what that's like. However, there is another book in the, I guess, trequel, I don't know, trilogy, I guess, is that word. And I have not read that one yet. I was trying to look for it, but I could not find it at the library. One of the things that I wanted to say about these type of books is that, again, they're in free verse, like Crank was, but it ropes you in. I'm very much like that when I read, and I describe it like, if you remember the cartoon Garfield and Friends that they had in like the 90s or so, not the Garfield one, but the U.S. Acres cartoon that was attached to it, where it was about the farm, and they had like Orson and Wade and Roy and stuff like that, farm animals and things. But if you're familiar with that show, Orson also loves to read, and when he reads, the whole farm becomes what he reads. So like if he's reading like a book about a ship or an ocean, the whole farm becomes an ocean, which is kind of funny. That's kind of like how I felt. If I stopped reading, I'd have to bring myself back to reality and say, wait, okay, you're not addicted to drugs. You are not, you don't have a child that you got out of drug use. You have a wonderful job. You're not you're not a teenage mother looking for a job and how to score more drugs. You actually have a very good relationship with your mother, and stuff like that. So I had to bring myself into reality, which I don't know if that was a good thing or bad thing, but it was just kind of fun. So if you ever read these books, beware that might happen, but again, it might not necessarily be a bad thing. Anyway, for my next book, my brother had recommended this book series for me. It's a book series called The Hunger Games. Supposedly there's a movie coming out about them. I have not yet started reading this book, but again, this is also a trilogy, so I hope to read this book and then the two following. So that's it. I bid you all a happy day and happy reading.